The shocking truth behind Samson and Delilah's downfall. A love that destroyed the strongest. Man who ever lived, have you ever loved someone so deeply that you could see the danger right in front of your eyes? This is the story of Samson, a man blessed by heaven with impossible strength, a warrior who could tear lions apart with his bare hands, who could defeat entire armies alone. Yet this mighty champion fell not by the sword of an enemy, not in the heat of battle, but by the whisper of a woman he trusted with his very soul. This is the untold story of how love became the deadliest weapon ever wielded against the greatest warrior the world had ever known. From the moment Samson drew his first breath, destiny marked him as extraordinary. His mother had been barren for years, praying night after night for a child, until one day a messenger from heaven appeared before her with news that would change history. She would bear a son, but this child would be set apart, consecrated from birth. Never would a blade touch his hair, for in those locks would flow the power of the divine. The child born from this promise grew into a giant among men, standing head and shoulders above everyone around him. His muscles rippled with supernatural force, his eyes burned with fierce determination, and his long, dark hair cascaded down his back like a lion's mane, untouched and sacred. The Philistines, the ruthless enemies who had enslaved his people for 40 years, heard tales of this young warrior and trembled. They sent their finest soldiers to capture him, but Samson stood in their path like an unmovable mountain. With nothing but the jawbone of a donkey, he struck down 1,000 armed men. Blood stained the earth that day as the enemy fell like wheat before the scythe. The Philistine rulers gathered in their grand halls, their faces pale with fear, knowing that no weapon forged by human hands could stop this force of nature. They needed something different, something more cunning. They needed someone who could reach his heart. Then Samson met her, Delilah. She appeared in the valley of Sorek like a vision that stole his breath away. Her beauty was legendary, her skin smooth as polished bronze, her dark eyes mysterious and endless like the night sky. She wore silks of deep purple and scarlet, fabrics that shimmered as she moved, jewelry of gold that caught the sunlight and danced across her throat and wrists. Her black hair fell in perfect waves, adorned with precious stones that spoke of wealth and refinement. When she smiled at Samson, it was as if the whole world faded into nothing. He had faced armies without flinching, but before this woman his heart surrendered completely. What Samson did not know, what love kept hidden from his eyes, was that the Philistine lords had already found her. In a secret chamber lit by oil lamps, 5 powerful rulers sat before Delilah, their robes heavy with embroidered gold, their fingers covered in rings of authority. They placed 1,100 pieces of silver each before her, a fortune beyond imagination, metal that gleamed and clinked with the promise of endless wealth. Their demand was simple but cruel. Discover the source of his strength, learn his secret, betray the man who loves you. And Delilah, looking at the mountain of silver, at the power and protection these rulers offered, made a choice that would echo through eternity. She agreed. Night after night, Delilah played her part with masterful precision. She would lie beside Samson in the darkness, running her fingers through his sacred hair, her voice soft as silk. "Tell me, my love," she would whisper, "where does your incredible strength come from? How could anyone ever bind you?" Samson, drunk on love and trust, would laugh and tell her lies. "Bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have never been dried," he said the first time, "and I will become as weak as any other man." So Delilah sent word to the Philistine lords, and they brought the bowstrings. While Samson slept, she bound him tight, then cried out that enemies were upon him. Samson awoke and snapped the bowstrings like thread touched by flame. The Philistines hiding in her chamber fled in terror. But Delilah was patient. She pouted, she wept, she accused him of mocking her love. "You do not truly love me," she cried, tears streaming down her beautiful face, "for you lie to my heart." Samson, unable to bear her sadness, told her another false secret. "New ropes that have never been used," he said. Again she bound him, again she called out the warning, and again Samson broke free as easily as a child breaking yarn. The Philistines grew frustrated, but Delilah knew she was getting closer. She could feel his resolve weakening. The third time, Samson told her to weave his hair into the fabric of a loom, and once more he broke free without effort. But now Delilah changed her approach. Day after day, she pressed him relentlessly. She questioned his love, his commitment, his very soul. How can you say you love me when you keep secrets from me?" she demanded, her eyes flashing with manufactured hurt. She gave him no peace, no rest, no moment of quiet. Her voice became a constant torment in his ears, her tears a weapon sharper than any sword. The strongest man in the world, who had never bent to any force, began to crumble under the weight of her persistence. Finally, weary beyond measure, his heart torn and aching, Samson broke. The secret that had been kept since before his birth, the covenant that gave him his power, spilled from his lips like water from a cracked vessel. "A razor has never touched my head," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper, "for I have been consecrated to the Most High from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." Delilah felt his words settle into truth. This time she knew he had finally given her everything. She sent an urgent message to the Philistine lords. "Come once more, for he has told me all his heart." They came quickly, climbing her stairs in the dead of night, bringing the promised silver. Delilah waited until Samson fell into deep sleep upon her lap, his massive frame at peace, trusting completely. Then she called for a man with a blade. The razor moved through his sacred locks, cutting away the source of his covenant, the symbol of his consecration. 7 braids fell to the floor, dark hair severed from the divine promise. And in that moment, the power that had made him legendary drained away like blood from a mortal wound. Delilah cried out, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He woke and rose to fight as he had so many times before, but this time everything was different. His arms that had once lifted gates from their foundations now trembled with ordinary weakness. The soldiers seized him easily, their hands rough and triumphant. They pressed hot bronze into his eyes, burning away his sight, leaving him in eternal darkness. They bound him with bronze chains and dragged him to Gaza, where they threw him into a prison pit. There, the greatest warrior who ever lived was forced to grind grain like a beast of burden, blind and broken, the object of mockery and celebration for his enemies. And Delilah? She took her silver and disappeared into history, her name forever synonymous with betrayal. But in the end, Samson's story did not conclude in that dark prison. His hair began to grow back, and with it, one final gift of strength. In the great temple where thousands gathered to mock him, Samson prayed one last prayer. He placed his hands against the 2 central pillars that held up the entire structure and pushed with everything left in him. The temple collapsed in thunder and dust, killing more Philistines in his death than in his entire life. But that is another chapter of this eternal story. The shocking truth remains that the strongest man who ever lived fell not to an army, but to a love that was never real, a trust that was never deserved, and a secret that should never have been spoken.